So what we're looking at today is chapter 7.2, and basically what we looked at 7.1 is what is a spreadsheet, who uses a spreadsheet, basically the fundamentals of a spreadsheet. What is the fundamental layout of a spreadsheet? Now, today we're going to be looking at some additional features of spreadsheet. So we're going to be looking at what is a cell, what are the different types of data in spreadsheet, how do we format our data. We're going to be looking more into the formulae and functions. There's something else called functions that works similar to our formula that we will learn so far. We learn about autofill, cell ranges, title lock-in, and so on. So all of those tools you need to remember for not only practical purposes, not only to know how to use spreadsheet, but also for your CSEC exam. Alright, so to get us started, we're going to start from, let's see, we're going to start from the top once again. So the first three paragraphs, alright, we're going to read the first, somebody can read the first, and then somebody else can read the last one. Amelie, can you read the first two? And then Amina is going to read the last one.
People generally use the terms spreadsheet and worksheet interchangeably. However, to be consistent with Microsoft and other publishers, we shall use the term worksheet to mean the row and column sheet where you place your calculations, and the term spreadsheet to mean the type of computer application or file such as Excel. Most of the Excel screen is devoted to the display of the workbook, which can contain one or more worksheets or chart sheets. We shall refer to sheets to represent worksheets or chart sheets.
Alright, Amina, can you read the last paragraph? Amina, are you there? We'll come back to Amina, Daniel Jacobs.
An Excel worksheet has over a million rows that extend down the worksheet. Numbered from row 1, it has 16 to 384 columns that extend across the worksheet, lettered A to Z, AA to AZ, BA to BZ, and continuing to the last column. A workbook can contain a minimum of one sheet and an unlimited number of sheets that can be added. This is restricted only by the amount of memory available to store the Excel file.
Alright, good, very good. Are you guys hearing me break up?
No, sir.
Alright,
You're not really breaking, getting a slight disturbance. We're hearing your voice over it.
okay. I think it could be the fan. I think my computer is installing an update, and that's why it's moving kind of slow. Alright, nevertheless, yeah, it's downloading some sort of update. Nevertheless, there are a few terms. There are a few terms from this paragraph, these three paragraphs here, that you need to take note of, that you need to understand for spreadsheet, a few terminologies. So the first two terminology is spreadsheet and worksheet. Now these two terms, as mentioned here, they can be used interchangeably. So when you have a spreadsheet open, you can say this is a spreadsheet, whatever, everything that you're seeing here, or you can say this is a worksheet. This all of these grids and columns and cells and so on. So that these two terms can be used interchangeably in that case there. Now, Microsoft, what they like to do is to use the term worksheet to refer to the rows and columns on the sheet. So they like to say this is the worksheet. And they also like to say that spreadsheet is the computer application that has the worksheet inside of it. So, so this file here, this entire file, this program here that you see I have open here that I'm moving, they would call that the spreadsheet. And they would call these grids and columns and rows and everything that you see in here as the worksheet. But the terms can be used interchangeably. Nothing's wrong if you say that this is a whatever you're seeing inside here is a spreadsheet. But the spreadsheet is more of the file because that is the category of application of software. If you remember, we first started, we said that we're looking at spreadsheet, we're looking at database, we're looking at word processing, and spreadsheet is one of those categories of software. And Excel is a type of software that falls under that category, is an example of a spreadsheet. And we also said that Google Sheets and the other application from OpenOffice, they're all applications that fall on the spreadsheet. So that's why they are terming it like that. They call the spreadsheet the application. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Good. So remember the words can be used interchangeably, spreadsheet and worksheet. And but mostly we would say the worksheet is the rows and columns, and the spreadsheet is going to refer to the application, the actual application. So Excel is a spreadsheet. Good. Our second paragraph, we have another term, the term workbook. Please remember to take note of these terms, what they mean. You need to be able to differentiate between them. What is a workbook? Well, a workbook will contain one or more of the worksheets. So you can imagine the workbook as if hopefully you guys have a book in front of you right now taking notes. So imagine it like your book that you have right now, like a literal book, and it has pages or sheets inside of it. So your workbook is this entire file that has all of the worksheets inside of it. So if you notice at the bottom here, there's an option to add more sheets. So that's like adding more pages to a book. So
Can you repeat that again, please?
give me a second. Let me see if I try to disable this update. Alright. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that the term workbook, as the last syllable there indicates, book. Compare that to a literal book that you would have. A book would have pages inside of it. So if we compare that now to the actual workbook, this file here is the workbook. And if you notice at the bottom here, it is as though we have different pages inside of it. So that can help you there to remember the terminology. A book has pages, the worksheet, the workbook has pages, or it has worksheets. So each of these individual sheets here is called a worksheet. So that's what we already determined. That these grids, rows, and columns, once you're seeing that, that is the worksheet. And these are individual sheets here. So this is worksheet 1, worksheet 2, worksheet 3, and so on. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So we also have another term here called chart sheet. So what is a chart sheet? Well, let me close this file. Let's open a new one. Good. So what is a chart sheet? Well, I'm going to create a simple chart. So name is create a simple chart. Good. So if you notice here, I just created a chart, and the chart is in the worksheet. So I can move this chart anywhere on the worksheet. You don't have to worry about how I created the chart. Later on, you're going to learn how to create charts. The main focus is where is the chart. So this chart is on the worksheet. If you notice, I can move it anywhere on the worksheet. We're seeing all the grids, the rows, the columns, so that we can continue to enter data in the background. Now, the question was, what is a chart sheet? Well, if I move this chart, once again, you don't have to worry about this, you'll learn this later on. I've moved this chart to another area. And if you notice, there is no grids, there's no rows, there's no columns here. This is called a chart sheet. So once you're only seeing a chart, and you're not seeing any rows, you're not seeing any columns, you're not seeing any cells, then that is a chart sheet. It's basically a sheet that only holds a chart. So if I was to try to move this chart now, if you notice I'm trying to move it, but it is not moving because it's basically a blank area, it's like a void. So it doesn't really matter, even if you try to move it, it's like if it's going to still be in the same position because there's nothing for you to know if it was actually moved. And if you look at the bottom here, the bottom left, the name of the page, you're seeing chart 1. That's indicating it is a chart sheet. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So the other term, sheets. Well, sheets is just a shortened version of saying worksheet or chart sheet. So like if we would give somebody a nickname, um, instead of saying Amina, we might say Mina. So it's the same here. Instead of saying worksheet, instead of saying chart sheet, we can call them sheets. But we won't call the spreadsheet sheets because our spreadsheet is only going to be one application there. Good. Next we have how many rows and columns do we have? Well, in the latest version of Microsoft Excel, we have about 1,000,000 rows and we have about 16,384 columns. So that stores a lot of data. But even though it stores that large amount of data, um, it still has its limitation as to how much data you can actually put inside of it. So the rows has its limitation, the columns have its limitation. Now when it comes to the sheet, you can have an unlimited number of sheets open. But even though it's unlimited, it's actually still limited. It's limited by the amount of memory that you have available in your computer. This is a term you would have learned in third form. Anybody remembers what is memory? Or what did
The
you
amount of external storage on a device.
go there back over?
The amount of external storage on a device.
Okay, good try. Not external, but opposite to that.
So that would be the amount of internal storage.
Okay, so um, yes, it's internal storage, but it's also the temporary storage of the computer. One of the other name of this type of memory starts with R.
Sir, RAM.
RAM, very good. And there's actually another name for it. It starts with M. M-A, M-A-I, M-A-I-N, main memory.
Main memory.
So those three names, they refer to the same type of memory. You can say memory, you can say RAM, you can say main memory. That refers to the temporary storage of your computer. So if you were to right click on your taskbar at the bottom here, you click on Task Manager, this window is going to come up, and you click on Performance. I notice you have this section here called Memory. If you click on it, it's going to give you more instruction, more detail as to the memory of your computer. So my computer has 12 gigabytes of memory, and it's also telling me how much I am using. Over here it says I'm using 5 gigabytes of memory. So if I was to max out this 12 gigabytes of memory, the 5 went all the way to 11.6 to match the full capacity there, then I would not be able to create any more sheets. So the amount of RAM that I have is going to restrict how many sheets I have open, but at the same time, it's also unlimited because if I was to have more memory, if I had 24 gigabyte memory, 32, 128, that means I would have a lot more storage to open sheets than my 12 gigabytes. So that is how it is unlimited because it depends on how much memory we have. But memory would also restrict how much we can have open at a time. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright, so what we looked at so far, spreadsheet and worksheets, they can be used interchangeably. A worksheet refers to the rows and columns that you're seeing. Spreadsheet refers to the literal program, the application. Workbook refers to basically the same thing also, the entire file. Think of it as a book. Um, Worksheet and chart sheets, those are like the pages inside of that file. Sheets is chart for those two terms, and we just learn how many rows, columns, and sheets we can have. Good. So let's look at now cells. And we're gonna have Amina. Are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you read for us?
Active cell. The active cell document window is highlighted with a darker border so you can tell where the cursor is located in the worksheet. You can move around the worksheet by using the arrow keys or with vertical or horizontal scroll bars. Once you have entered data into the active cell, Excel has several ways to complete a cell entry. These include press enter, press tab, press shift plus 5, press an arrow key, click another arrow key, click the enter button on the formula bar.
Good. So we already determined that these are our cells. All of these rectangles that you see in here, these refer to our cells. Now, these cells is where we are typing our data. That is the location of where we are typing our data. So how do we know where we are typing our data? Well, so far, I'm sure you would have noticed that wherever I click, you will always see this border appearing. So that is called the active cell. The active cell is highlighted with a darker border. So wherever I click, you'll notice this darker border appearing. Even if I highlight it more, notice the darker border going all the way around the cells. So wherever I click, whatever I highlight, that is the active cell. But if you notice here, even though I highlighted this range of cells, notice only one part here is shaded in white. We're going to learn why that is the case later on. But just note for now that wherever you see this border, that indicates the active cell. So if I want to type in cell A1, I can't just go and click anywhere and start typing. I have to select A1 first and type my data inside of it. If I want to type in N10, that's this cell here, I have to find that cell, click on it, and then type my data. So any cell, before you can type inside of it, you have to make it active so that you can put in your data. Now, one thing to note is that when it comes to your CSEC exam, they would ask you questions like that. I like to tell students that your CSEC exam is practical, but only that you will not be getting a computer. So like how other subjects are practical, you will get the tools to do the actual subject, not so with IT. Because why I say it's practical and you won't have a computer, because they ask you questions like that. They ask you questions, um, how do you enter data into a cell? So you have to go step by step explaining what you would have to do. So you're gonna have to say first you're gonna maybe open the spreadsheet program and you go to the sheet that you want to enter the data and then you left click on the cell or you highlight the cell that you want to enter the data. You highlight cell D4 and then you start typing the data. Or you can even say you highlight the cell, you double click to enter the cell, and you start typing your data. So that is just one example of how they might structure your questions. So that is why it's important to pay attention as to what are all the fine details about using all of these programs because any one of them they can actually bring on your exam. So that is the active cell. That is how you make it active by simply clicking on it. Now you can move around your worksheet with the arrow keys or the scroll bars. So if you click anywhere and you start pressing the arrow key, it will move the highlighted cell in the direction of the arrow key. So if you're unable to click anymore or move a mouse, you can use the arrow keys. Now you have the scroll bar that you can navigate with also. If you notice, um, if you try to scroll up and down, it doesn't go down anymore with the scroll bar. So in that case, if you want to see below, you have to click on the arrow. Notice now I'm at 49. So, and then you can go up and down between those areas. But then notice it's reduced once again. So to go down, you have to press the arrow, and the same for going right also. You'll have to press the arrows also. Let me see if it's because there's no data. Yeah, because there is no data in the worksheet, that is why the bar was changing its size so that it can fit that blank area. But now that we put data at those 40 locations, the bar is going to allow us to scroll back and forth between those areas. So that's something to note there when it comes to scrolling and navigating on your worksheet. So you made yourself active, and you can either double click on your cell to go into the cell to start typing data, or you can just make it active and start typing. Either one, it will start entering data into the cell. Now, as the paragraph mentioned, there are a few ways to complete the entry of that into that cell. And this is important because when you enter text, like for example, this case here, it's not going to affect anything. For example, if you click somewhere, it's not going to affect anything. But in the cases where you are creating a formula, so if you type equal A1 and you go and click somewhere to complete that cell, let me see, A1 plus or equal, and you click somewhere. Okay, good. So this is the example there. So you go and click somewhere to try to complete that cell. It's not going to work. To try to complete this entry here, it's not going to work in that case. So you have to know what are some of the ways that you can complete that entry without clicking. So you can press the enter key, you can press the tab key, you can press shift tab, press another arrow key, but in this case I doubt, no, arrow key will not work in this case here. So because it's constantly going to go between the different cells to enter into the formula. Click another cell, depends on what you're entering, as it has showed you, and click the enter button on the formula bar. So formula bar, where is the enter button? No, this is the formula bar, enter. So this here at the top here, notice another bar we're learning about. This is called the formula bar, and that there that's clicked on was the enter option there to complete the formula. So you have quite a few options that you should take note of where you can use to complete a entry into a cell depending on what you are entering. So especially when you're creating formulas, you want to be careful because persons get accustomed to double clicking somewhere and they complete the formula, but sometimes what happens when they click somewhere, they accidentally change their formula to something else, and that ends up with a wrong formula. So just be careful with that in the future. Alright, are we following so far?
Yes, sir.
Sounds like I lost the rest of you.
Who
Yes,
knows?
sir.
Any questions from anyone? Anything we looked at so far before we move on?
No, sir.
I hope so. So the next paragraph, let's have Tumblr.
You can also edit a cell in various ways. First, make sure the cell is active. Then either 1. Type over the cell's current contents. Note, the old data does not have to be deleted first. It is replaced by the new data. 2. Double click on it to modify its content. 3. Press the delete key to erase it and type in new information.
Good. So we just looked at how do we enter data into our spreadsheets. So now, what if you want to edit or delete the data in your spreadsheet? So if you click on a cell and you don't want that entry anymore, you can simply press the delete key. It will delete the information. I think the backspace, yes, backspace also works. But if you notice the difference between the two, when you press delete, it only deletes the information, it's gone. But when you press the backspace, notice the cursor here appears, so it automatically goes into the cell and allows you to start typing right away. Now, it's not a major breakthrough, but it's just a slight difference as to how they function. So yes, that's how you delete data. Now, in addition to that, there's two other ways that was mentioned. So if you want to say you want to change this word here entirely, you don't need to press the delete key or you don't need to press the backspace key to clear first and then start typing. You can actually just start typing. You highlight it, you make it active, and just start typing over the data. And that's gonna overwrite whatever was inside of that cell without even you having to delete what is inside of it. Now, I'm hoping that some of you picked up that that can also be an issue. Say, for instance, you have information here that you want to keep that's important to you, but you accidentally go and press some keys on the keyboard. Yes, you can accidentally overwrite some of your information in your spreadsheet. So you have to be careful with that also when you are working on your spreadsheet, that you don't accidentally type over your information. But we all know most of these programs they have the undo button so that we can go between those changes. Top left, we have undo and we have redo. So it's important also to remember the shortcuts. So Control Z is the shortcut for undo, and Control and Y is the shortcut for redo. So, so you can constantly, quickly go between the different changes that you would have made. Good. So you can overwrite whatever information is there, you type it over. That's another way you can edit. Now, what if you want to make modify the information inside of it? Well, you highlight the cell, or you just simply double click on it so that you can put your cursor wherever you want. I don't want red anymore. I want numbers here, and you modify the information inside of it. So that is how you enter information, you enter your data and modify inside of your cell. Any questions before we move on?
None for me, sir.
No question, sir.
Good. Let's look at cell reference now, and then also types of data. So Dante, you can read both.
Cell references. Cell references are the combination of column letter and row number. For example, the upper left cell of a worksheet is A1. Examples of other cell references are Z25, BC304, and GG100. Types of data. There are two types of data, labels and values. Labels are non-numeric data that the spreadsheet will not use in calculations, such as a person's name or an address. Values are numeric data which can be calculated.
Very good. So we already learned in the previous chapter about the name of a cell. How do we get the name of a cell? And that is also called cell reference. Why do we say cell reference? Well, if you think about it, all of you have a name, and when you want to find out more information about a person, you might say, I'm going to reference somebody, or you might ask somebody to get more information. So I want more information about Amina. I'm going to ask Amelie to get more information. So I am referencing it, or I am calling upon somebody else to get that information. So referencing, as in you are calling upon that name of the cell so that you can make use of it. So cell referencing in the spreadsheet is going to be what we're doing so far equal A1. So I am referencing A1. I'm calling upon A1 to get the information that is inside of that cell. That there is cell referencing. So the main fact that you're using a cell's name, A1, Z25, BC304, GG110, whatever the name of the cell is. The fact that you're going to use the name of the cell, that is called cell reference. Um, Next, we have the types of data in spreadsheets and in also other areas of IT. There are basically two categories of data. We have labels and we have values. A label refers to any non-numeric data. So what are non-numeric data? What is non-numeric? Anyone?
Sir, data that doesn't have numbers in it.
And that would be example
Sir, letters.
letters. Very good. Letters, what else? One more. Start with S.
Sir, symbols.
Symbols. Very good.
Sim-
Yes, symbols. So letters and symbols are our non-numeric data that we have, that we most programs would make use of. So when you type a word, when you type certain characters, those are non-numeric data. Now that is used for a person's name, address, and so on. Now values are numeric data, and most cases they are being calculated. So a person's age, the year of birth, the date of birth, um, and things like that. So later on, we're actually going to learn that some numbers we actually don't treat them as values, but that's a more technical part we're gonna learn later on. But just note for now that labels refers to non-numeric data and values refers to numeric data. And notice the key part of this here of values is that we want to do calculations with them. That's the key part of values, to do calculations with them. Good. Alright, so one person gonna read the first paragraph here, and then the first paragraph in values. Darren, you can read that.
Labels. In Excel, any data that begins with a letter or includes a letter is defined as a label. For example, year or last name. Note that labels are left aligned within the cell and cannot be included in numeric calculations.
Good. Next paragraph.
Values. If the first thing you type in a cell is a number, Excel considers it to be a value. Note that values are right aligned in cells and are used in calculations. For example, a sum of money would be considered a value. However, a telephone number would not be considered a value since this type of data is rarely used in calculations.
Good. Destiny, you can read the last two.
If you do not want a cell's numeric contents to be treated as a value, then the entry must be given with an apostrophe or the cell can be formatted for text. This will prevent the number from being used in a numeric calculation. Examples of text format are a year such as 2018, an identification number such as 826045, or a telephone number such as 1112525. Default displays. Default means that automatically, unless you specify otherwise, numeric data is always displayed in the right side of the cell. Non-numeric data or text is displayed in the left side of cells.
Good. So we're gonna look at this aspect first. So default. For most programs, spreadsheet, database, word processing, they have their default. For example, when you're working on a Word document and you're typing something, the default is that it is left aligned. It's on the left side of the page. If you want it to the right, you have to go and format it like that. So that is default. It is a setting that when you open the program, it starts with that setting. So the default for labels is that they are left aligned inside of the worksheet. Did I break up there?
Yes, sir. Can you repeat?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I noticed my computer started. Yes, going over what I said. So I said that default means that whenever you open a program, whatever setting it has, that is what it will start with. So for example, whenever you open a Microsoft Word, it starts on the left. That is default. It is defaulting to left align. If you want it on the right, you have to go and change it. So it's the same with spreadsheet. By default, labels, text are going to be left aligned. And that can actually be a question on your paper. They might give you a spreadsheet and they might ask you what type of data is in that cell. So if we type characters, notice it's on the left side of the cell. And the opposite is for values. If we type numbers, it's going to appear on the right side of the cell. That is its default location. So labels on the left, values on the right. Now, as the paragraph here mentioned, there are some cases where you would not want to treat treat numbers as values. So that's what I was actually mentioning, referring to up here. That values, we mainly want to do calculations with them. Whether you want to calculate somebody's age, if you want to calculate the time, whatever you want to do, values we mainly use for calculation. But we have numbers that there is no need for us to do calculations with. For example, somebody's phone number. Can you think of another number that does not require calculations? Address, very good. Somebody's address, the lot number, or if there's any other number in the address, there is no need for you to calculate that. Um, is there any other example? Telephone, lot,
Sir, an ID number.
an ID number, very good, an ID number. There's no need for you to calculate that. So whether that be a national ID number, your TIN ID number, your passport ID number, whatever the case, any kind of ID number, there's no need for you to do calculations on that. So very good. So that is the idea. Once there is a number, a value that you have no need for calculations, then we do not treat it as a value. We're going to actually treat it as a label because we don't want to accidentally use it in any form of calculation and end up with a wrong value. So if you do not want to use the numeric value, the numeric content as a value, then you would need to start it with an apostrophe or to format it as text. So if we put an apostrophe in front of one, notice it went on the left hand side here. So it's going to be treated now as text. So let's actually try that out and see what happens. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to put tree and tree. I'm going to put apostrophe in front of it. So I'm going to do equal this plus that, enter, and we have 6 there. Now it's still using it in the calculation. Then the entry must begin with apostrophe. It's still treating it as number. Alright, let me try to format it. Where's text? Format it as text. Still. That is still numbered as text. Notice that it's on the left hand side here. Now, second. What happened to my formula? Yes, that. Okay, looks like now it's working. Format it as something is happening to my spreadsheet. Listings converting to text. Alright, add location equal that plus that 6. Good. Let's try that once again. Apostrophe. Nothing. Convert it to text. Still nothing. But notice now it moved over to the left hand side here. I think, not sure what's happening there as to why, but it's still picking it up as a number, but in this case here now it's not treating it as a number, because notice now the value is on the left hand side, which is the default for text. But I guess because it's still values inside of it, it's doing the calculations. In which case it's supposed to not do the calculations. I'm going to do some research on that and see why is it still working like that. Because it says clearly here, it's supposed to prevent the number from being calculated. I'm on the latest version, Marano. I'm sure I have a more updated version than you. Right. I'm going to check and see why it's still adding. So examples of formats of text, we have 2018 and so on. But you guys get the idea though. The main idea for you to take away here is that there's certain values, there's certain numbers that we don't want to do calculations with, that we do not want to treat it as values. We don't want to do calculations with them, such as telephone number, ID number, address, and so on. Good. So in those cases, we're going to need to format it as text. Let me see. Something I want to do, shall I? Yeah, but obviously that won't work. General. What did I change? So if we type tree, that's going to go on the right. And we type tree dot. No, still picks it up on the label. Okay, seems the textbook is kind of outdated because it said somewhere that if the first thing you type in a cell is a number, Excel considers it a value. But even if you put text after it, it's still going to be considered a label, because obviously you cannot do calculations with that. Okay. So labels on the left, values on the right, and some values we do not treat them as values because we don't want to do calculations with them. Good. Any questions before we move on?
No, sir.
Alright, formatting values and dates. So, let's see. Alright, so formatting values and dates, and then text alignment also. So, Emmanuel, formatting values and dates.
Dates can be entered directly into cells. For example, if you enter January 31st, 2018 in a cell, it will be formatted to a default format such as the 31st of January 2018. Values can also be formatted with decimal placement, commas, dollar signs, and so on by selecting cells from the format menu.
Alright, let's look at that first. Formatting values and dates. So, as mentioned before, each software has a default display or a default setting, a default feature. So for date, there is a default format. So let me clear all of that. If I was to type in January 31st, 2021, okay, so January 31st, January 31st, 2018. So notice it actually did not pick this up as a date. It only picked up this here as a date, and it changed it automatically. So the day first then the month, and then the year. So that's the default for that. Now, if you want to change the format, say for example, January 31, 2021, I typed it in and Spreadsheet did not pick it up as a date. If I want to make it a date now, if you notice, there's this section here, number, right on the home tab. So firstly, not sure, I didn't mention this as yet, but all of these words that you're seeing at the top here, home, insert, draw, page layout, formulas, data, they are called tabs. Tabs. So this is the file tab. This is the home tab, insert tab, draw tab, page layout tab, and so on. So we have to use our terminologies when referring to any part of the spreadsheet. So if I say go to the formulas tab, I mean clicking on the word formula so that you can be at this section here. Now, under the home tab, you'll notice this number section, and this box here is where you would change the format of your data in the cell. So in order to do so, you first need to highlight, you make it active, click in the box, and you choose what you want. So in this case, I'm going to choose chart date. It actually didn't make any change. If you notice, it's actually showing you a preview of what each format would look like. I wonder if because it didn't put a comma. Right, because it didn't put a comma there, it didn't pick it up as a date. So notice this one here has custom, the one below, and the one above has date. Because with that, I selected short date. Now, if I select long date, notice the difference there. I notice the difference in the formatting. One of them has the date first, the other has it in the middle, the other one has the month afterward. If we do short date, the month comes first. So that all leads back to default settings for these formattings. So these are the default formattings that you can have. If I wanted to turn that date into a percentage, I can click on percentage and it turned it into a percentage. Now, what if you want to further modify the different formatting? Well, at the bottom here, you're going to notice more number formats, and this box is going to appear, and it's basically the same window here. Notice all of the formattings you have here, number, currency, date, percentages here, and so on. But when you click on each one of them, say for example, I'm going to click on date, you're going to get more options as to how you want to format that date. So say I want just the day and the month. I'm going to click OK. And notice I just have the day and the month, even though I typed in the year 2021. So by default now it's going to show just the day and the month. So that is how you format your data. If you type a number, say for example 50, actually if you want to type 50%, this is something very important to remember. If you want to type 50%, let me see if you type 50 and percentage, if it's going to format itself. Okay, it automatically changed the format. So notice at the top here, we have the format of percentage at the top here. So just type in the value, and so if I just type 70, notice it's still general by default. So I could have typed 50 and the percentage, or I could have gone to the top here and select percentage. But notice in this case here, it added more zeros. So you just might have to go into it and delete the additional zeros. But notice here now, we also have two decimal places. So in some cases, you might want to see decimal places. And to increase and decrease it is actually right here under this number section. If you press to the left, it's going to increase. To the right, it is going to decrease the number decimal places. We also have some additional formatting here. So percentage, that's going to do that. If we typed in, for example,
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
If you type in 0.70 and then click the percentage format, wouldn't it automatically turn to 70%?
correct. That is correct. Because if you notice what had happened is that it is basically doing the calculation, that same calculation multiplied by 100 and divide by whatever to get it a percentage. That's basically what's happening here. But not everybody gonna know that to get 70% you type in 0.7. So that is gonna be a little more technical part for persons that can actually remember that. But it's up to you if you can, but if you notice that can work also. So um, the easier way would be just to simply type 70, put the percentage sign behind it, and that will actually format it as percentage for you. A very good observation though. So I was talking about this value here. Say for instance you want to divide it among the thousands, hundreds, and so on. So that is where the comma style comes into play. So the comma is gonna go at every thousands, just like how we would write a value. So we can easily differentiate between the values, the different numbers, and be able to say that this is in fact 1.3 million. Um, so if you want different styles of currency, you can have that here also. So we have euro, we have dollars, we have yen, and so on. Now, if you notice here, we have accounting at the top here. There is accounting and there's also currency. So the only difference is basically the position of the sign, of the money value sign, I would say. Other than that, it's the same comma formatting and giving you that decimal of two decimal places. So we have the number format, we have currency, we have accounting in case we want to use money. We have two forms of dates, short date and long date. We even have time. So if I convert that to time, that would be that there. So that's going to give us the format of time, percentage, fraction, and whatever the other examples we have here. Or if you want to do for the formatting, that is up to you because you will have to know what data you are putting into your spreadsheet, how you need to present it to look exactly as you want it to look, and so you now know where you have to go to format your data to look exactly as you want it to look. A percentage should look like a percentage, a date to look like a date, money to look like actual money and not just numbers. Any additional questions about the formatting?
No, I don't have any.
Are you guys following on the formatting? Everybody else? I'm not hearing the rest of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Good. So let's continue. Good. So we looked at formatting our values. Now let's look at text alignments. And we're going to have Emmanuel Henry.
Yes, sir. Text alignment. Text alignment or justification is also a common in a spreadsheet. The formatting toolbar includes four buttons: align left, align right, center, merge, and center. The left, center, or right options align dating the cell. You can change alignment on a cell or a block of cells. If the text or number is as wide as the cell, then changing the alignment has no effect.
Alright, the last paragraph.
The merge and center option is useful for centering headings. Select several cells, for example, A1 through C1, and then click on the merge and center icon. The text in A1 will appear to be centered across the cell, although it is still located in cell A1. For this feature to work correctly, the heading must be in the leftmost cell in the block range.
Alright, give me a second. Let me take everything. Yes, sorry about that. Are you guys still with me?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Oh, the sound keeps on this turn. Good. So now we're looking at text alignment. What are the different ways that we can align text in our spreadsheet? Well, we have four options here: align left, right, center, and merge and center. Now, you should be familiar with this from Microsoft Word. It's basically the same: right align, left align, and center. And the additional option of merge and center. That usually comes when you're using headings in a table. Now, as the last sentence here mentions, if the text or number is wide as a cell, then obviously you won't be able to notice the change in the alignment. So if I type the word, type some numbers here. So we already know that if we type a number, it's going to go on the right. If we type text, it's going to go on the left. Now, if you want to change them, notice we have this alignment section here on the home tab. We have right alignment, and that's going to put our text in the right. We have left alignment, and that's going to put our numbers on the left. So if you want it centered, obviously you use the center option there. Now I'm going to right align the number. I'm going to add more numbers. Or we're going to try text instead. We're going to add more text, and notice it took up the entire width of the cell. So even if you change it, well, you notice it is a slight difference, but you would not be able to notice it dramatically unless you make the cell wide enough for you to actually notice those changes. So the alignment, that's very important for you to remember. The alignment is inside of the cell. The alignment is inside of the cell. So left align is to the left of the cell, right align is to the right, center is for the center of the cell. Now if you notice, there is some additional alignment above the common ones. We have bottom align, middle align, and top align. So these common alignments that we have here, left, right, and center, those are for horizontal alignment. Notice it's going left to right, that's horizontal. Now the one above is actually for vertical alignment. So if the cell was taller, like I have it here, and we press the middle align, notice it's going to go into the middle of that box. If we go to top align, it's going to go to the top of the cell. So there are going to be some cases where you might want to make cells wider, taller, wider, and these alignments are what you can use to properly position your text inside of that cell. So that's it for alignment. Well, that's it for the common one. Left and right. We also have merge and center. So how does merge and center work? Let's find another area. Alright, so I'm going to create names, grades, subjects, and grades. Good. So I'm creating a list that we can put grades inside of. Good. So now, say for example, this is a table here, and it's a table for grades, but like any table, you want to know what is the data inside of it. So you create a title above it. So at the top here, persons will type in a title. So grade 10, subject grades. But notice when you typed in that title, it doesn't go directly across all of the entire table. I imagine if it was a larger table now. So that's where the merge and center comes into play. You highlight all of the cells that you want and you select merge and center. Now what basically happens is that those three cells that I highlighted becomes one. If we look at the bottom here, I'm going to add some borders. So notice we have three individual cells once again. When you highlight them, merge and center, it makes them into one cell. So that way now we can have information in one centered above the others. So that's the use there of merge and center. Now, one thing to note is that if you can remember earlier when I was talking about active cell, I said that wherever you click, you would notice this border. But when you highlight, notice only one part here is highlighted because only one part here is white, because even though you are highlighting all of these cells, one cell is actually the main cell or the main active cell, and it's always going to be the top left cell. So in this case here, when we highlighted those three cells and use the margin center on them. Remember, each cell must have a name. So when we use that margin center, it didn't combine the three names together. It used the name of the first cell. So notice I clicked on the margin center. I'm looking at the name box and it only has a name of C1 because it is only using that name of the first cell. If I was to make another margin center, let me go to another sheet. So I'm going to highlight all of these cells here. So even if you guys can see this name box in the top left corner, and
Oh, yes.
only one person in class, are the rest of you paying attention?
Yes,
You
sir.
guys see this name box in the top left corner here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So notice whenever you click, we already learned about this. Whenever you click somewhere, it shows you the name of the cell. But when you highlight a bunch of cells, you notice the name that is appearing. It is only one name. Only one name is appearing there, and that is the name of the first top left cell. So even when you highlight, only that one name is used. When you merge and center all of those cells into one, so that you can type your information, you put it in, you format, do whatever the case. What is the name of the cell? It is the name of the top left cell. What is the name of this range? The top left cell. And if you notice here, it is only E5. So that's something very important to remember. When you highlight a range, when you use margin center, the name is that top left cell, or it starts with that top left cell. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Seems I'm losing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So those are the four formatting, the four alignments that you have in spreadsheet. You have left align, right align, center, and merge and center. All right, let's look at cut, copy, and paste now. Grace, can you read that?
Cut, copy, and paste. The cut, copy, and paste commands operate consistently in all Microsoft applications. The cut command removes the selected information and places that information on the clipboard. The clipboard is a storage space that temporarily holds information. This information may then be moved and pasted to another location. Note that Excel copies the entire cell, including formulae and the resulting values, comments, and cell formats.
Good. So we should all be familiar with cut, copy, and paste. We do it a lot, especially when creating assignments. We go on the internet, we copy, and we paste it into our Microsoft Word, assignment done. So it's available in spreadsheets. You can highlight a bunch of data, use the copy option, notice it's on the home tab, cut, copy, and paste, or you can also use the shortcut key. What is the shortcut key for copy? No one knows the
Sir,
shortcut.
sir, press control, control,
Control
C.
and good. Control and C. Good. Control and C, that is the shortcut for copy. So notice when you copy something, we have these lines that are going around the area that you copied. These are called marching ants because they kind of look like ants marching around the box, and it indicates what you would have copied or what you would have cut. So Control C is the copy. What is the shortcut for paste?
Control V.
Control V, good. So Control and V, I notice it pastes an exact replica of what I would have copied. So what's the shortcut for cut? What is the shortcut for cut? Control and what? Well, basically, if you have a computer and you have spreadsheet, if you hover your cursor over these options, it's actually going to show you the shortcuts also. So Control and X is the shortcut for cut. So if I highlight this once again, Control and X, and I paste it somewhere, it moved that data, it cut that data from where it was to another location. Now it's very important for you guys to remember those shortcuts. So we learned 5 shortcuts today. Undo is Control and Z, so please take note of them. Undo is Control and Z. Redo is Control and Y. Cut is Control and X. Copy is Control and C. And paste is Control and V. Please take note of those shortcuts. Now, how does cut, copy, and paste work? Well, it uses a feature called the clipboard, and the clipboard is a temporary storage that stores all that you would have copied. Now, to get your clipboard, notice I clicked on this arrow here, and we have some of the what you would have copied here. No, I think that is not it. Copy. Let me see. Copy that. Copy that. Good. So notice as I copy, notice it's populating information there. I'm going to copy this number. So notice it's copying the information here. So when I clicked on this arrow here, it gave me the keyboard so I could see what I would have copied. So if I copied multiple things, I can double click on that and I can paste what I would have just copied. So it's kind of like the clipboard that you have on your phone. But they call it temporary because if you were to close off the application, then obviously you're going to lose what you would have copied. Actually, let me try that. I want to test that. If you're actually going to lose it. Save. Because the textbook, they say one thing, and then when you do something, something else appears. So if we open back the application and we still have information there. So if we go here, so temporary in what sense? I guess it's temporary in the sense that it doesn't go between applications. If you open another Microsoft Excel, you won't see it in another Excel. So it's only for that one Excel file. So we know how cut, copy, and paste works. Now, one thing to take note of is that when you're copying, it copies everything inside of the cell. So whatever formula, whatever value, whatever format you have inside of that cell, it copies everything. So if I typed 50 and I format it to percentage and I copy that, I paste it somewhere, notice it pastes it with the formatting. So whatever is inside the cell, it pastes everything, copies everything, and it will paste everything also. So we're at the 10:30 mark. Um, wait, what? Oh my god. Why didn't you guys tell me we were going over time?
So you were very caught, Clinton. We didn't want to kill your mood.
Yes,
We
sir.
didn't want to kill your mood.
No man, you're supposed to kill it. Cause your class started now. And I realize what. Oh my god.
That is not why, but we're not gonna say it. That's not why. Well, anyways.
In the future, please remind me when I'm going over time.
Yes, sir.
I
Yes,
don't.
sir.
I don't know what happened. I thought 10:30 was the where I'm supposed to end. Um, as I wonder why class was actually going on for so long. Either way, in revision, what we looked at, actually your class is supposed to start now. So next week we're gonna revise back over what we looked at today. So if you guys don't have any questions, we are going to end here for today.
Bye, sir.
And goodbye.